The year is 324 AG, and Dimelco is at war with itself. The colossi took everything from us. They razed our cities and trampled our world into dust. Oceans boiled and the ground quaked with their footsteps. Millions perished. The survivors fled underground to hide like the prey they were. Then we learned to fight back. We built war machines from the wreckage of our shattered past. We called them Valkos. The brave souls who piloted them were the Huskars. They fought for a new home in this broken world at great cost. That was 200 years ago. Now we still defend New Valor against the colossi that would destroy it. Some say we're winning. Our tech is getting better. New allies from across the galaxy join our fight every day. But if we can adapt, the monsters can too. We survived the apocalypse once, and we can do it again. My name's Commander Vadian Wayno, call sign Raptor. I've been fighting this war for a long time, but I can't do it alone. That's why the New Valor Defense Force needs you to suit up and fight back against the colossi. I won't lie to you, they're bigger, faster, and sometimes I even wonder if they're smarter than us. But with your help, we can beat them and take our planet back for good. Think you have what it takes to be a Huskar? Join me. Together we can take Dimelco back from the monsters. For us, it's the rebirth of our home world. For them, it's Mechageddon.
So what did y'all think of that trailer?
Woo!
That was awesome.
Hell yeah.
I know, that's
awesome.
so cool.
So
I love
good.
how Art put in all the little like kaiju noises for the colossi, like screeching and roaring during that. It was so cool.
I love the little flame the welder in getting
Yeah.
animated. And I love just the little scanning beep, 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 beep. And of course Raptor. Love Raptor.
Yeah, Raptor's the best.
That voice for Raptor is absolutely perfect.
Yeah,
like
that
Ultron is just wonderful.
worked out really well. So hi everyone. If you're here watching us live on twitch.tv or after the fact on YouTube, we are here to talk all about Mechageddon. And now that you've watched with us that super cool trailer, I think I'm going to introduce us to you and tell you why you should care what we have to say about Mechageddon. So first of all, if you don't know, I am Jenny Jarzabski, Starfinder Senior Developer and Project Lead on the creative team for Mechageddon. And I am here with some of the awesome authors who worked with me on this project and made it possible. So there's also some other authors too. Shout out to them that aren't here with us in the panel live, but these are our authors for the adventure parts. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
I'm Joe Blumquist. I wrote Colossus Clash, the first part of Mechageddon, and I'm a longtime Paizo freelancer.
I'm Dennis Muldoon. I wrote the second volume, Chains of Fame. I'm also a longtime freelancer.
And I'm Ray Bendel. I use they, them pronouns, and I wrote the third book of Mechageddon, The 13th Hour.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I've got some awesome folks here with me to talk about Mechageddon. So first of all, before we get into our discussion and questions for them, just to go over things in case you don't know, Mechageddon is an adventure path that uses the mech rules from Tech Revolution in Starfinder. It goes from levels 3 to 18, mostly mech combat, but you've also got some cool character moments, so you get to level up your character as well as your custom mech or one of the mechs provided for you by the New Valor Defense Force, who you'll be fighting with. This AP includes a story that we've broken down into 3 parts, written by Joe Blomquist, Dennis Muldoon, and Rigby Bendel. And then we've got some side jobs and some other cool tools for you to build out a campaign and just play around with mechs and play the fantasy of having this story of your friends as new mech pilots who rise in the ranks and become big damn heroes, or I don't know, maybe tragic failures, depends on what you do in your campaign. So let's just dive in to this super awesome AP. So Joe, you wrote the first adventure called Colossus Clash, also with an exclamation point. Very important distinction. You want to tell us about your adventure a little bit?
Sure. So in Colossus Clash, you are new Huskars, which are pilots of the Valkos, the mechs that are native to Daimalko. And you're just graduating in from the academy to become part of New Valor Defense Force to fight for the people that are all around you.
Awesome. So who kind of recruits you to join the New Valor Defense Force? Like, is there can you tell us about maybe a recurring character who the players get to meet and get missions from?
Sure. So your initial commander is a gentleman by the name of Rafter. Rafter is a Huskar from years back who has since mostly retired from active combat in order to train and lead new units of Huskars in their combat. That being said, you may have been recruited by another Huskar, Firefight. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, definitely. And we can see Raptor's art here on screen at this point. So here is kind of like Raptor is sort of a classic example of a veteran Huskar, someone who's been a mech pilot for a long time on Daimalko, lived through a lot of dangerous missions. You know, he's maybe a little gruff sometimes. You just heard him speaking actually in the trailer. That was all through his voice as he introduced himself. But he's a really good person to have around for a new squad. So hopefully you as players or you as the GM can have fun portraying him in your campaign to kind of get folks integrated. Oh, we also have some other characters too. Joe, do you want to talk about like the other squadron at this point?
So you are part of the 13th Squadron. You and your friends will come up with a name for your squadron, but your squadron isn't alone. Going through the academy with you is the 14th Tempest Squadron, led by Sharpwing. It has Starburst, it has Highbrow, and it has Chuckles, who the four of them are your friends, your allies, your rivals, could even be your lovers. Just depends on how much you want to put into it. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Oops, tech difficulties. So what are all those? Their names are like Sharpwing and Highbrow. Are those their real names?
Oh, no, those are their call signs. Just like any good 1980s propaganda film, you're going to find that you have call signs for your pilots that you guys should come up with. In the military, usually, call signs have been something that were given to you by your squad and never for good reasons. But on Daimalko, your call signs are a badge of honor, something that you hold really dear to your heart.
Yeah, and there's actually in our player's guide, which is on the Paizo.com blog available, and the product page for Mechageddon available for free download, tells you a little more about call signs and even squad names. I think Joe mentioned that the 14th Squadron, all these pictures, this art you just saw, these characters are all part of the Tempest Squadron, as they call it. So there's going to be some in the book itself, as well as in the free player's guide. There's some guidance for how you can come up with some cool call signs for yourselves, or like Joe said, maybe you want to do it real military style and just give each other some fun little names, kind of rag on each other. But again, with player buy-in, get everybody in the group into that before you do it. And also name your squad itself, which is something that you can decide on. So please check out that document. It's got a lot more to help you get into this game and really live the fantasy of being a squad of mech pilots.
So that does raise the question for everyone else here. What would your call sign be, guys?
Ooh.
I've had at least 3 or 4 friends independently nickname me the little, like, the professor. So my call sign would probably be like, professor or something like that.
Love
Perfect.
it. What about you, Dennis?
You know, I legit was called in college, frequently referred to in college as Wookiee, and I have a feeling it would end up that.
I love it. What about you, Joe?
I won't use any of my college nicknames, so I'll just go with the one that I just Hooligan.
The deep lore. Hooligan, is that what you said?
Hooligan.
I
Yep.
love it. I feel like
And
I might be diva. But I also jokingly, when we were working on this project, we did a couple of like movie night get-togethers where we watched like different mecha, like old movies like Robot Jocks. We watched like some anime, you know, we watched a bunch of stuff like that and just had fun together. And I jokingly had nicknamed myself Tex in the Discord because I'm Texan and Tex is a kind of not great character, but he is sure a character in Robot Jocks. So who knows? Maybe it would be Tex too. It's a good question,
yeah,
Joe. Yeah, Rigby, did you have something to
and
add?
I wanted to quickly jump in. So Joe mentioned that you can have these strong relationships with the Tempest Squadron, and I just want to be really clear that those relationships stick with you. I wrote the third and final part of this AP, and those relationships will come back in one way or another. We'll talk more about that when we get to me, but I just want to be really clear that they're going to follow you throughout your time as a Huxar.
Yeah, thank you, Rigby. And that's not ominous at all for your adventure. So yeah, let's jump back into talking about Colossus Clash. So, Joe, why is it called that?
Colossus Clash was the original name of the AP as a whole. Originally, we were going to go with Kaiju Riot for my volume, although Kaiju Riot has come back. It is an in-universe name for a series of movies based on Damalco, kind of in the Godzilla vein. So eventually, someone in Paizo was like, "We should call it Mechageddon," and that just stuck. And so we bogarted Colossus Clash to be the name for my volume instead, and use that in game for a video game in game, as well as the title of the overall book in the AP. Anyone that is familiar with Macross knows exactly where we're going with this.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so funny because when we named it Mechageddon, I think it was actually Eric Mona who came up with that title in the end. We had floated a bunch. Colossus Clash was really a contender. We all really liked it, but we just kept talking and he was just like, what if we called it this? Because, Armageddon and like apocalypse and things like that, I had used some different words to kind of come up with to give an example of the threat level you'll eventually be dealing with in this campaign. Spoilers, but not really spoilers. You still don't know how it happens. And yeah, he came up with that and I thought it was really good. So we made that adjustment. Little did I know that I would be writing and working on the grand finale for Starfinder 1. So in a way it is Mechageddon. Not intentional, but maybe we cursed it. I don't know. So yeah, Joe, so tell me a little bit about your inspirations when you were writing this adventure.
So, like I was saying before, I drew a lot of inspiration from like the patriotic propaganda movies of the 80s. So like Top Gun is a great example. But I was a kid who grew up watching Robotech, which eventually became my love of Macross, because I love the idea of an anime where characters die and it matters who lives, who dies, what happens in those relationships. Though what I was really trying to get in that first chapter was to try to get the feel of Gundam 08 MS Squadron. It was this very good team dynamic that they had about a Gundam group in the outskirts in war that was kind of like Vietnam, and it was really well done for the late 80s, early 90s, and that's kind of where I was going with that one.
Okay, so what does the adventure do then to like really drive that home, that the relationships matter and give you that, we talked about the Tempest Squadron and how those characters are introduced in your adventure and how they stick around and even into Rigby's adventure. What kind of tools are there for the GM to let that be a thing in the adventure?
So we have a whole sidebar and a group of mechanics built around building relationships with the squad mates in Tempest Squadron. You can go and hang out with them and show off your scars. You can do karaoke. You can play an in-world game called Kaiju Ball with them. You can go on dates. There's all kinds of things that you can do that build these relationships up. Sometimes your relationships are more like a rivalry. Sharpwing's a really great one for that. Sharpwing will challenge you, and the only way to really get on Sharpwing's good side is to be better than her or acknowledge the fact that she's better than you.
Either way, choose your strategy.
Right.
Love it. Yeah, that's super cool. And it's also important to note too that if your group isn't comfortable with that aspect, you don't have to include it in your game. You can also have those be like platonic or friendly hangouts. They don't have to be romantic dates, but if you want to smooch another pilot, maybe, smooch in the mechs, you can. Like, we're making that possible for you because that is a tried and true part of the mecha fandom and mecha as a genre. Absolutely. And yeah, so what should GMs do to prepare for your adventure then?
Well, definitely make sure you know how to run mechs. That's going to be
good call.
There are some encounters that are in the mechs, some encounters that are out of the mechs throughout the entire adventure path, and it's about 50-50, so know how to do those mechs. If you want to, play some adventures that build up to it, maybe something like Junker's Delight is a really good one because your characters are starting at level 3, so play something that kind of gets them there. Maybe play some of the pretty awesome things coming out of Starfinder Society, like Gifts Ungiven. If anyone hasn't played that, you should. Or, I'll toot my own horn, play some of my adventures like Illegal Shipment or the one coming out right now at PaizoCon that will make you absolutely hate me and make your characters want to leave the society today to go to Damalco where at least it's safe.
Wow, that's an interesting endorsement. Yeah, don't want to miss that, everybody. You need to check that one out for sure. So you also wrote some encounters that we're featuring on the Paizo blog pretty soon. Can you tell us about those?
Yes. So I took a lot of inspiration from simulations that Dennis did in his part of the adventure, where it was kind of building some things that you can do to kind of make it so that you don't always have to do the same kind of missions over and over. And I ran with the idea of the pods that we have seen at conventions that allow you to get in mechs and play through a LAN network with your friends to kind of do the same thing in universe. So Firefight, who is another Huskar, Huskars are kind of local celebrities on Damalco. So Firefight decides to have a mech pod game where people can go and fight against other teams of mechs, just see what happens, and kind of play it like the last Starfighter. Like, you did really good. You should come and join the NVDF. And so I kind of ran with that. And then also there's a second one that is much more of a training module that is done in the academy to kind of get you guys ready to go through the mech training to see if you've met that muster or if you're going to be maybe piloting a tank or infantry or something instead.
Yeah, that's super awesome. So look out for those. Those will be for free on the Paizo blog. And it's a good way to kind of dip your toe into Mechageddon, get through kind of like fast forward through those first 2 levels if you'd like, or just try it out and see if playing this Mechageddon thing is going to be good for you. Or just free, if you want to use it for another campaign, it's just free encounters out there for you. All right, last question for now before we move on and talk about part 2. Joe, what is your favorite part of this adventure? I know I'm going to ask for your favorite child, but...
Well, and I'm going to tell you I have 2.
That's fine. You can have twins.
First is what Rigby talked about before. Everything you do in every part of our adventure matters later on. The relationships you build, the choices you make in my adventure, go into Dennis's adventure, go into Rigby's adventure. The adventure path as a whole works better because we worked together to make something that we all loved. So there's that aspect, and then there's the aspect of the crazy things that I didn't think I was going to get away with that Jenny left in anyway. Like, we had a discussion during movie night about how funny it should be that we have meters that go, oh, this Colossus Torment is Colossus rating 7. Well, what would Colossus rating be? It would be CR. So of course it would be. And Jenny left it in because she thought it was great. So all
Yeah,
right.
I love it. I love little like meta things like that actually incorporate the game as a diegetic, like, this is real in world, and I promise we can make it work. And it just was such an elegant idea. Like, it just works so well to say, of course, it's Colossus rating. And yes, you will notice that they are, when those are mentioned in part 1, that they are the same CR for the creature, that they are the Colossus rating and CR matches. Yes.
It made for just a wonderful love letter to everything that we've loved in the animes and in the movies and in the game all together.
Yeah, it's really cool, everyone. Colossus Clash definitely brings Mechageddon to a running start. So you're gonna have fun and have these crazy cinematic moments from the minute you start playing this game. But after our characters make kind of a reputation for themselves and they've been recruited and they've been trained, they move on into the second adventure, because these are a chronological story. So it's telling a story that will go over a campaign for you. So Dennis, tell us about what waits for our now our recruits who are starting to make a name for themselves in part 2.
Yeah. Well, sure. So you come out of the first volume and you are starting to, as you said, make a name for yourself. People know who you are, and you're starting to attract some attention. And part of that's leads to you being selected for an experimental program where you are get to try out some new mechs with some new technology. You're asked to put them through their paces, and that involves taking you off of Dimalco. And you have some ability to do that. You get to try out some new forms, and you get connected with some new quest givers both on and off planet that will give you opportunities to put these mechs through their paces and to get your name out there, build some new allies, make some new connections, hopefully get some new support for Dimalco, that sort of thing. So part 2 is mostly about doing that, going out into the wider world. All the while, there may be things going on in the background that you aren't initially aware of, and I don't want to spoil too much, but you may become aware of. But yeah, that's the main idea here.
So what kinds of organizations hire the player characters to do jobs?
Well, we have taken a little inspiration from some of our movie nights. We have a group that is all about harvesting materials from defeated kaiju. So they obviously have their own wish list and their own tasks that they would like you to take on. That's mostly on planet. Going a little farther afield, you have the opportunity to do some jobs for an organization like, say, the Knights of Galarian, who are concerned with not just one planet, but a wider swath of near space and a wider swath of the galaxy, and they have their own tasks that they would like you to help with, and your own opportunities to build connections there, that sort of thing.
So you mentioned the faction on Dimalco who kind of goes in and they scavenge colossi parts. So I think that brings us to an NPC you wanted to talk about. Can you tell us about this NPC?
Yeah, Gorgath. Oh,
Gorgath, and now you can all see his art, his glorious art.
Yes. Gorgath is what would happen if you spent all day every day in the husk of a defeated kaiju, harvesting materials from it, and you lived and worked inside here, and that's what you did every day. What would that do to you? I think we can kind of see that in the art here. Gorgath is the leader of the people that are harvesting materials. He's the one who hires you to do some jobs. You get to go and meet him in his office, which, as I described, is an interesting place. And he has a number of things that he would like you to do for him. You can sort of choose how much or how little of that you want to take on. And that's kind of a thing throughout this adventure of, there are a few sort of initial quests for each of these quest givers, but there's also some additional ideas for GMs to draw from if you really make a connection with one of these quest givers. Like you love Gorgoth, you want to do more work for him. There are some ideas in here for where to go after the initial few quests.
Yeah, so he's definitely a character, and there's more too. We just don't want to spoil all of them until you have a chance to read the book or play for yourself. So tell us more about your inspiration for writing Chains of Fame. I don't know if we said that yet, but that's the name of part 2.
Yeah, mech media like Pacific Rim, or I saw Robot Wars as a child, and it's always stuck with me. If anybody doesn't know Robot Wars, it is it's an experience. That's all I can say. So things like that, but also I'm really a big fan of like blended genre stories, and one that I drew from, actually kind of a surprising amount. I had this in my head as we were going, was Trigun, which is one of my all-time favorites, and it blends sci-fi and Western in a way that I really like. And so things like that are like, blending different genres of stories together in interesting ways.
What did you do? Did you include any of that in this adventure particularly?
Yeah, I think we'll talk about this a little bit when we get further down, but yeah, I definitely included I tried to allow opportunities for taking your mechs into settings and genres that maybe you wouldn't normally see mechs in. And so there's one part in particular that's sort of the like Western beleaguered town out in the boonies that's beset by bandits, and what are you going to do to help liberate this town? But with mechs, everything's better with mechs.
Exactly. Yeah. Why have like a standoff at high noon when you can do that in a mech? Like,
that's right.
Duh. Yeah, and we actually have art. Because I think you said that this was one of your favorite parts of this adventure was doing this, like doing the kind of Wild West showdown, but with mechs. And I have art here that I can show now in the panel of a character who you encounter. Do you want to talk a bit about this character?
Yeah, so I mentioned Trigun as an influence, and I think you see that more with this character than probably any other specific moment. I definitely was picturing some of the characters that that Vash runs into there, and thinking about what I love about those characters, and really tried to channel some of that in Priot. They are. Yeah, they're great. They're over the top in all the best ways. Yeah.
Sorry, what'd you say, Joe?
The Vash never had to deal with someone who blended hand cannon and star knife.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, they look really cool. I really predict that somebody's probably going to use this as character art at some point. Mm-hmm. Like, even if they don't fight, and honestly, maybe there's a way to avoid a showdown with Priot. Who knows? Like, depending on your party, maybe you become friends with them. But this is just gorgeous art. So thank you for showing this to us, Dennis, because I really like this character too.
And that somebody who might use this for character art might be me. I love this art so much.
You know what? That's one of the best things about writing and developing these things is you can be like, I want this really cool art of this thing to exist. And you can make that happen. It's great. All right. Let's see. What other questions do I have for you? So we talked about inspiration, but what should GMs do or know to best prep your adventure?
Yeah, I think for this adventure, and this is maybe not advice I would always give to GMs, but don't prep too far ahead. Uh, this adventure presents several different quest givers that all have, you know, multiple things that they would like PCs to do. Your players may really connect with one of those people and want to go deeper with those people, and there is both room and tools in this adventure to allow you to take them down that path. And maybe, maybe they get so invested in working for Gorgath that they never even go and do any of the jobs for one of the other organizations, because they just want to focus over here. That's fine, and there's room for you to do that. And so I'd say don't go too far ahead in, you know, going down the path with every different avenue. Wait and see how your players want to proceed and what they really connect with, and allow them to go further down that path.
That's really good advice. APs can feel kind of like a railroad sometimes because we do have such a strong through line of story, and that's as intended. It's, it's for the GM's ease of prep as well, and that's fine if that's how you like to run and play these adventures. But we did try with Mechageddon, like Dennis was saying just now, to give you some tools. So there's some, like, if you are familiar with Ports of Call and Drift Crisis, if you've seen those books, we have some adventure seeds in them where it's says, here's like a little like story idea and maybe some creatures or a location. It's kind of like that. Like we have some different support for, here's Gorgath's next couple of jobs. They're on this planet. You fight these creatures, it's this challenge rating, right? Or colossi rating, if you will. So we have some of that, because that's the idea, is that if you want to tell more of your own custom story, this can just be a foundation for that. Or you can go through it as scripted, and it will work very well that way too. Or at least we hope so. Speaking of customizing, though, there is one more thing in your adventure that I want to call out here before we move on and talk with Rigby, which is some training simulations. So, Joe has that little intro blog encounter where you get to get in the mech pod and, run around and play like the video game. But tell us about the training simulations. What are those like in part 2, and how can a GM use those for players to have a better or more of an experience?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun thinking about this simulation system, and I just spent the whole time thinking about, well, okay, when I'm running this, what am I going to want to do with this system as a GM? What am I going to want to make available to my players? If you have this ability to simulate any sort of mech combat that you want to, then you really have a lot of freedom to set up fun scenarios. This can be, hey, we had a really intense session last week. Let's start off with some fun, unexpected simulation that, there's no real lasting consequences from this other than character consequences, perhaps, depending on how things go, but like interpersonal consequences. But yeah, you can really do fun things. You can use it to try out new mech builds. If a player can't decide if they want to make, a sort of a ranged sniper mech, or they want to make an up close and personal beat 'em up mech, cool, let's run a couple of simulations. You can try each one out, see what resonates with you. Another thing I thought of here was like a post-mortem on a fight that didn't go so well. If you
That's cool.
if you lose an encounter and you have to retreat, maybe you go into the simulation, you load up that same encounter, paused at the moment where things started to go bad, and okay, what are some different choices we could make here that would have resulted in a different outcome, and simulate again from that decision point and see how it would have gone differently if you'd done something else. You can practice some teamwork maneuvers and stuff. And then the last thing I thought of here, and this is actually another inspiration I didn't think of, was the book Starship Troopers. This didn't so much show up in the movie, but that book talks about how the squad deals with interpersonal beef. And Doesn't really matter how it happens in the book, but the idea of having that outlet for, hey, you and your teammate are beefing. Doesn't really matter what. You need some way to settle this. Cool. 1v1. 2 Huskars enter, 1 Huskar leaves in the simulation. Let's see who wins. And
My
that's how
friends
we
and I
settle
need
it.
some conflict resolution, and Raptor just told us to get in the amps and duke it out in our mech so we can't hurt each other.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it.
You can squash that beef without damaging your ability to do your job.
That's so good. I love that. Yeah, so definitely look forward to that. That's something that can add to your campaign, and just kind of like what things you were saying about the fantasy of let's practice strategy, let's practice maneuvers. You don't have to do that if you're not a super tactically minded party. If you'd rather just role play. I mean, you could do both. But I really like that idea of using that. Also, there's some new mechs you get, or maybe you're going to build a custom mech, and you can try it out in that amps. So in that sim. So yeah, that's a really cool tool that we're introducing in Chains of Fame. And I had one more question for you, Dennis, but I'm actually going to save it for the end. I'm going to ask everyone, so you can all kind of think about this. When we get to general questions, I'm going to ask everyone what would be in the director's cut of your adventure, aka something that either got cut during the dev and edit process, or that you thought of later. You just woke up at night, like I do sometimes, and think, oh, what if I put this in Mechageddon? So be thinking about that, and we'll circle back to that question in just a minute. But first, I think we're going to talk about our finale of the campaign, which is part 3 of our Mechageddon adventure, the 13th hour, for levels 13 to 18, and that was written by Rigby. So Rigby, why don't you tell us about your adventure?
Yeah, so the 13th hour is the finale of the adventure. And so while, the heroes are out, they're enjoying life, being, celebrities, something is brewing back on Dolmaico. And at the very beginning, I know, couldn't be.
Never would happen.
And so at the very beginning of part 3, they are called back to return home to discover that Dolmaico is in grave danger. And New Valor has become overrun with demons, and there's a growing chasm that threatens to rip the entire world apart. And so it's up to the heroes to save the world and from this new threat.
No big deal. It's fine. You got this.
No crisis at all.
There's totally a crisis.
Yes.
Totally. So you mentioned demons, Rigby.
I did.
And I recall us watching some very special source material together for inspiration that you had requested. Can you tell the whole panel audience about that now?
So one of my biggest inspirations for demons, and also not a mech anime in general, but like a huge touch point for me, is Devilman. And specifically, let's be clear, the Devilman OVA, Devilman The Birth, that has the most excellent English dub you can imagine. Please, if you have not seen it, go enjoy life. Go watch Devilman The Birth. And I do genuinely love Devilman. Like, I think that it has been like a very formative media for me. And so I thought a lot about Devilman when writing both the demons and also some of the things that might be happening to you, your friends, any of your allies, any of your enemies that might be happening in this book as well.
Yeah. So we talked about, Devilman. There's some new demons coming into this adventure, though. Some are kind of how you'd expect. We can show here this little wish spawn demon art. This was a fun art order that I got from Rigby.
Yeah, so one of the things that I love about demons is that because they can be so many things, and sometimes they're, your typical, like, if I think of a demon and I just sketch a demon, it's got some horns, it's got, some angriness, maybe it's got a tail, but this This little guy, the Wishbone demon is his name.
The little guy, little.
He-
He's not little. He's not little.
he's in fact very, very, but also like allowed me to play a little bit with some sort of different ways to think about combat encounters, because um Mechageddon is already playing with a lot of the assumptions of the combat encounters in Starfinder. And so with the Wishbone demon, one thing that I'll mention is that different parts of this demon have its own stats. This is not one demon that you fight, but instead there are ways in which like you can fight different parts of him. And so it allowed me to play around with some of the mechanical aspects of Starfinder as well, which I think is also really interesting, because once you get up to higher levels with mechs, so mechs themselves become like a boost to CR ratings. And so if we're talking about level 18 and then you add the bonus for like being in mechs, there are some encounters in this book that I sat down and I was like, I'm designing a CR24 encounter. This feels a little bit illegal. But this book gets really high octane and high power in terms of just the sheer combat numbers and like the amount of like D12s that we were running. One of the things that we had organized when we started playing this, started planning the adventure and writing it, is we had organized some like games where we just played some mech combat, and someone was like, okay, I gotta roll like something like 24 d12s for damage, and so the numbers get really high and I think really fun. I love to roll a fistful of dice.
Absolutely. I think CR23 is the final encounter. Does that sound right, Rigby?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so yes, this adventure goes to level 18, but because you're in mechs, you're basically at 3, boosted 3 levels for what CR or colossi rating you can handle. So yeah, you're gonna get to some pretty wild heights by the end of this book, for sure. So in order to fight that, though, the heroes might need to make some new alliances. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So one of the things that comes back in this part of the adventure, so in addition to your allies coming back and having some changed experiences, so do the colossi come back. And the colossi come back, when Daimalko becomes under threat. There are some ways in which an enemy can suddenly become an ally or become a friend. And one thing that I really got to do is like to delve a little bit deeper into what it is to be a colossi. Often I think it's easy to be like, there's just, a colossi here and is rampaging, but to really think about, what would their history be like? What evolutionary niches they feel like? What sort of connections might they have as colossi? How do colossi groups? So I'm very excited to have some of that peak for those of you who are really interested in colossi, who are, the ones who just love the ways in which like they appear as well. There's plenty of room to interact with them in ways that are not just, facing off against them in a big old mech.
Yeah, and we've got some really adorable art of a colossi that I love, that is from Rigby's adventure.
Yes, I love him too. This showing up on your screen, I hope, is Three Slams, who is one of the colossi that you can interact with during this adventure, and he was in fact one of the first colossi. I'll go ahead and minorly mention this. Is one of the first colossi that you meet who is attempting actively to talk with the Huxars and perhaps even parlay with them.
Yeah, so things get really weird in part 3. We've spoiled a little bit. We won't go too much further into that, but just suffice it to say that, when literal abyss, when the demons come to Daimalko, things get real weird. And you might have to make some new friends, or at least alliances of convenience. Maybe not.
Yes.
You also. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I was going to say, because as much as I was inspired by Devilman, I also am very much inspired by some of the parts of the mech genre that get to be a little bit more of the deconstruction side. So Neon Genesis Evangelion, of course, everybody loves and knows, but I really was thinking a lot about what possibility that mech stories have to really engage with some of like the bigger questions about like, what does it mean to be in a world that is constantly at war? What does it mean to like have the separation between like the body of the mech and the body of the pilot? And like, everybody knows it, the flesh, the divine, the machine. We all know it. We all love it. And in particular, when I was writing the 13th hour, I was on the very on ramp to have some like gender confirming surgery. I was going to have top surgery, and literally I was under like I had to turn it in at midnight, and then at 7 a.m. the next day after turning in the final project, I was checking into the hospital to have surgery.
Oof.
So one thing you'll really see in this book is a lot of like consideration of just sort of what it means to have a body and different relationships that characters might have with bodies.
Yeah, that's really good commentary, Rigby. Thank you for sharing that. If you are an anime watcher and you like mecha anime, if you're familiar with Knights of Sidonia, or even in a cheesier way like Darling in the Franxx, I'm not going to say much more, but like that idea of like bodies and like mechs as body replacements or enhancements that is present here. It can be as present as you want it to be in your own campaign, obviously, but if you have characters or want to make characters that explore those types of stories, we got you, fam. Like that is here in this adventure, especially. So what else should GMs know before they run your adventure? Like what will help them prep this?
So unlike Dennis, who's like, give some room, I would say make sure that you read the final section and know what the adventure is building up to.
Mm-hmm.
The end of the adventure very much serves as like a climax where your alliances matter, where the decisions that you've made throughout the campaign matter. And so if you know where this is going and how this is going to play out in the final section, you then know sort of like what you should be paying attention to really closely when your PCs are, engaging with them, when they're interacting with like, some of their fellow squad stars in the Tempest Squadron back in book 1. Like how will these like the NPCs and the relationships and sort of these bigger decisions all come back to what happens at the end of the 13th hour?
All right. And what's your favorite part of this adventure that you can share? That's not a total
So,
spoiler.
So I can't share a ton, but I will say I put in some of my favorite treasure I've ever put into an AP in here. So there is a fully stocked mini fridge full of skincare products. So if you have ever had to buy $100 retinol, or even more, I don't want to talk about my skincare counter. That can add up to quite a bit of money. There's also, a very typical motif that you see in tabletop games is like you will find somebody's journal that details all of their grand plans, but this one comes in the form of a gratitude journal.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
I really love the treasure and sort of some of these like moments I included that really helps sort of ground what it is like to live in Dimalco and what it is like to be a member of the New Valor Defense Force.
So there's like some environmental storytelling in here then.
Yes, I would definitely say there's a lot of environmental storytelling.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, hey, just think about it. As long as you beat that creepy Furby looking demon, you can get some skincare and either use it for yourself or you can sell that for like a lot of creds. So you're going to be good, everyone. Yeah, so thank you, Rigby, for sharing about the 13th hour. I'd love to ask you so many more questions about that and all of you, honestly, but like I don't want to spoil too much for our audience who will soon be reading and hopefully playing Mechageddon, and I don't want to tell them everything that happens. That would be no fun. Mechageddon, of course, also has a lot of back matter. We've got a whole gazetteer about New Valor, this city where a lot of, especially Adventure 1 and parts of Adventure 3 and 2 take place in. We've got a catalog of new mechs. We'll just splash some crazy mech art across the stream right now. We've got this cool mech that you can pilot with music. Actually, Joe wrote that one. So yeah, thanks Joe. Shout out again. We've got some other really cool ones. There's like lots of different styles and functions in the mechs that we've provided for you as examples. You can also customize them. You can make your own. You can kit bash, whatever you want to do. We've got, as Rigby mentioned, Rigby helped write an article about the colossi of Daimelko, which gives a lot more lore about the planet, about the kaiju living there, why they exist, why they're attacking the cities. If you're curious about that, this is going to be your source. And there's some really, really cool art of them, like this Dracogore. Hey, look, another Joe creation up on screen right now. You can see
Also,
that guy.
might be the subject of Kaiju Riot, the movies.
Yeah, so yeah, the Dracogore is actually the main subject. So you'll see that familiar, friendly little face in the intro encounters, as well as throughout this adventure. We've also got some new demon article. Rigby did a lot of work on that as well, writing an update on an old demon lord that I don't want to say too much about, but is gonna kind of potentially poke back into the setting here. And then we've got side jobs, which, as I mentioned, if these 3 adventures, campaign length, mech campaign, that was redundant, campaign length. Anyway, if that's not enough for you, we've got 4 short adventures written by some really great adventure authors. Just little encounters at various levels. Level 8, 11, and 13, and 15 that will give you just more to do, like in Dennis's adventure, where we provide you with extra content. This is another example. If you played Fly Free or Die, you'll recognize the side job format. It's very similar in function and length. But I won't say much more about that because you're going to be able to get this book in your hot little hands and check it out for yourself. I only have a few more minutes to talk with these awesome authors, so I'm going to just ask some general questions and let folks answer. As promised, what would you include in the director's cut of this adventure? Of Mechageddon in general, or your general adventure?
I had an idea when I was working on the simulations that they'd be filming Kaiju Riot movies on Daimalko, and your squadron would have to go and try to give them advice on how things should be with their fake kaiju, and then of course a real kaiju attacks anyway.
And it's like, here, now you can get some some hands-on really research opportunity. I love that. Dennis?
Yeah, I had an encounter where you were hired by maybe a less than friendly employer who asked you to go liberate a factory that was being held by terrorists, as they present it. And you get there and you realize, well, these are actually the factory workers who are sort of rebelling against some oppressive employers, and they had some fun Tickery shaped mechs that it would have you would have had some fun battle, and then maybe been presented with an interesting choice to make as a party about how you want to proceed from there. That unfortunately ended up on the cutting room floor, but
sorry about that.
That's the way it goes.
It's really cool though. Like sometimes we cut things that are just super awesome, but it didn't fit, or like we just decided to go a different way with theming. But that sounds like it would be a really cool infinite encounter to pop up one day. You never know, right? The Mechageddon director's cut. Rigby, what about you? Do you have anything to add to that? Oh no, you're muted.
I'm good. I was like, if I just start talking, they're just gonna have to bleep out everything I say because everything is spoilers.
Oh no.
But I had even more encounters that that connected back to your original squad members, then even showed up that even Jenny saw. So my director's cut would really lean really hard into how everything has interacts with and brings sharp wins and all your 13th and 14th Tempest, sorry, all the 13th Squadron and the relationships with the 14th Squadron back into view. That is what my director's cut would be so much heavier on that. And also maybe, I don't know, maybe you could kiss a kaiju in my director's cut. That's what I would love.
I love that. I am green lighting this director's cut. All these director's cuts green lit for Mechageddon 2. It's going to be 600 pages. Oh God, I hope Eric's not listening because it's really not. I promise. They won't let me do that. All right. All right, I've got a few other questions. Let's see if we can lightning round this out. And all of you can join us too in the Discord. We're going to have a Mechageddon panel questionnaire and AMA for all of us. We'll probably be sticking around for a little time after this panel airs, and we'll be around this weekend as well to answer more questions. But okay, so why should the folks watching this play Mechageddon?
Giant monsters.
Because it absolutely rocks. Like, the energy around this project has been unmatched. Everybody on this project loves it. We have truly given you a work of art. I know everyone's like, play the stuff that I wrote. It's great. But literally, I think this is the best thing I've written to date, and it will be really hard to ever top it.
100%.
Yeah. And I'll just say this more than any other thing I've ever written or been a part of gives you so many ways to make it your own, in so many different facets that it's really great.
Yeah, I think you should play it too. It's the grand finale of Starfinder 1. It's our send-off for this awesome game that we've loved playing and working on for years now. Obviously, the game's not going anywhere, but, Paizo as a company will be pivoting to Starfinder 2, which is also going to be awesome. But yeah, play this to do your last hurrah in Starfinder 1, or one of your last hurrahs if you're still playing. Like, heck, that's fine. All right. I think we'll end this with a final question then. So, what kind of character would you play in Mechageddon? Tell me about them. We already know each other's call signs now, but tell me about your character and or mech.
Yeah, I'll start us off here. Anybody who's played with me knows that I have a deep love for the mechanic class in Starfinder, and in all forms. There's so many different ways to play that class, and I can't imagine playing this and not building a mechanic who was just an absolute gearhead, totally, completely focused on customizing and building out the perfect mech for them.
That's awesome.
Hooligan is he would be probably an envoy operative, and known for being something of a troublemaker, but dynamite when behind the controls of Azure Dynamo, his mech.
Ooh, nice.
And I would absolutely play an evolutionist who wants to become a mech, someone who was really all in on the combination between who they are and what their mech gives them as tools to maneuver in the world. So I don't know, Dennis, maybe a little close to the mechanic, maybe a little close to Technomancer, but really the themes of the evolutionist, I think, are A++ for this AP.
It'd be so good. And I think for me, I would probably play like a really cheesy, like operative star singer, like archetype who's, hoping to become like a famous Pact Worlds idol. But of course, she was born on this hunk of rock with big old giant monsters. So there's only one thing to do, which is jump in the cockpit of a mech and sing her heart out in the anthem, which you can get because it's in the Mechageddon mech catalog. Yeah. All right, everyone. Sadly, I think we've reached the end of our panel. I could talk about this for another hour. I think y'all all could too, but I think we're going to let you get back to your PaizoCon scheduled programming. So please, if you have a few minutes, come hang out with us over in the Discord. We'll be answering some chat questions. If you have more questions or just hanging out for a little bit, please check out the book if you haven't already. Check out our free blogs. You can check out those intro encounters. You can read more about each of us and our inspirations for our project, as well as authors who couldn't be here on this panel today, with the author blog. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave y'all for now. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope that you have fun. I hope you get to play Mechageddon. Come tell us about it in the forums, on Discord, on Paizo.com. And with that, I think we're out. Bye, everyone.